Yeah, but I'm going to send it to international customers first.
No.
Ballot of the half boy. The half boy.
By registered in Budaya, you will get a notification whenever it is.
I'm not registered.
How do you know? You are registered in Facebook, then I better connect with you.
But then I try to contact them. The scan doesn't work.
No, usually through Facebook you can't go down your accounts, unfortunately, because their capture rate is stronger than our communication, cross communication, in terms of transmission quality. But even in India, much more stuff like that. MU, but he is my senior.
Oh. Lawrence. Sit next to my good friend.
Sit in front of
All these people are very good.
I think first row should be all Sabah and second row is rocket. Malayan sit that row.
He was like, no, it's all last night.
You guys want to go? Were you here for early to books?
No.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So welcome to Gerak Budaya. We are pleasure to have you with us today for the launch of Joe Samad's latest book, which is Sabah's Rocky Road. And a little bit about our author. He was born in Labuan. I think most of you already know he was from Labuan. And then you have likely read his sharp analysis in Free Malaysia Today or the Daily Express. But his influence goes far beyond the newsroom. And yeah, today he will be accompanied by Yusuf Abdul Rahman. I wanted to actually invite him, but he's already on the sofa. Yeah, a little bit about Yusuf Abdul Rahman. He was originally from Miri, Sarawak, and he was a founder member of Parti Keadilan Nasional, now known as Parti Keadilan Rakyat. So without further ado, yeah, I wanted to invite them, but they're already on the stage. So yeah, yeah, it's okay. So yeah, to Joseph.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I can see I have a huge number of supporters here. I'm very grateful for your loyalty. And anyway, you're still my honored guest. And thank you for coming to my book launch, Sabah Rocky Road in Malaysia, events that shape Sabah's political and economic realities. Tan Sri Syamuddin, our good friend, supposed to be here. We got a forward. But this minute can't. He's still overseas. He's a former appeals court judge, and currently the Human Rights Commission. So to replace him on the panel, I got my good friend Yusuf from Sarawak, who will be glad to answer all the things that in the current media about Sarawak wanting to leave Malaysia, and so on, and they have the rights to oil and gas. He can explain that. Pity the press. I invited the press to come, so they really missed to cover this event because he's the man who can answer a lot of questions on current issues. And I look forward to the discussion later. So at least this close-knit conversation we can have among friends. So this is my third book, as many of you know. The first one is Unequal Partners, Race, Religion, Domination, and Equality in Malaysia. And the second is Revisiting Social Contract, Nation Borneo Perspective. They're all interconnected. So this is kind of trilogy, so to speak. So the latest book is a series of curated essays that traces Sabah's eventful journey from the British colony to the present. I have covered events such as how North Borneo Sabah was brought into Malaysia on dubious circumstances, and how Sabah was misled in forming Malaysia, and the lopsided development that has taken place between East and West, and the changing of Sabah's demographics by population. Singapore exit from Malaysia, we are talking about this now. I covered that also in the book. And the current oil curse, I call it, similar to Sarawak's issue, and the 40% tax revenue sharing, which is in the news. A lot of people from this side don't follow that because maybe they're not interested or maybe they're not aware, but through my writings and through discussions such as this, Yusuf and I can highlight or explain what are the issues involved. I also have been frank about Sabah leadership failures, because that's the first thing when I mentioned to KJ John, hey, your people also corrupt. Okay, I agree, KJ, there's no denying. Okay, accepted. But we have to look at the context, what circumstances and all that. But it's something that we have to admit also, Sabah Sarawak has some failures past with regards to what they call the sins of man or the temptations of man, i.e. corruption. I mean, let's not be shy, talk about it. This is something that we have to do every day. So Malaysian history, you had a meeting, good friend I just met. It's not about the Hindu-Buddhist Sriwijaya Empire, not all about Malacca Sultanate of the 15th century, not about Malay teaching the Europeans how to build a boat, or that the Malays can fly in those days with the supernatural power. But look at the history of Borneo, the Sulu Sultanate, Brunei Sultanate. Actually, the Brunei Sultanate came before the Sulu Sultanate. It's even richer history than Malacca Sultanate, with a boring Portuguese, British, and Dutch mix. We have a very interesting history, which is also affecting Malaysia in the real sense of the word, because if you read news about the arbitration taking place in Europe, where the Sulu family or descendants have taken Malaysia to court and they won their case, the first round of arbitration, of course, gone. Malaysian leaders were woken up, Lawrence, suddenly, oh, it actually means business. Then we got going and hired international lawyers and so on to counter that. Luckily, we won. But I think that's not going to end because the Sulu Philippines claim has not been dropped by Philippines. See, all these Malaysians here don't know. A foreign country is claiming your state. Goes to the civil service, foreign service, KJ, we never talk about it. A foreign country still claim Sabah state. Sabah is Malaysia, all right? And they have not dropped the claims, all right? So what does it mean? It means a lot in territory and rights and foreign policy and so on. This has not been highlighted by mass media here. So, of course, we have the narratives as usual, race, religion in Malaysia. I belong to a lot of groups here in West Malaysia. The discussion is still on that level. We have not moved on to talking about the real Malaysian, what real Malaysia should be. I think the real Malaysians, some people like me, so very innocent guy, low degree, very matured, not offensive in any way, very polite, as opposed to people like Akmal and all that, who go to the streets, whatever that he does, I don't know. So my book covers a lot of these topics. It's written in essay form because I intend to add more chapters as we go along. All right. So thicker book and more stories like that. That's how I designed the book. And my two books, let's say, Pachong has been nominated for Best Nonfiction 2004-2005. So actually, you read my book. And I'm glad that you nominated Lawrence twice, huh? So this book also I'm hoping to be nominated. I mean, I don't like to say I would like to win, but just to be nominated is good enough for me because people are reading your topic and all that. Okay? And my books are available here in Karangkudaya, as well as in Akunia and popular bookstores. So thank you again for coming to my book launch. And after this, I hope we can have another discussions together about topics that I've written also about all this measure. So thank you very much.
Hello. Before proceeding to the discussion, I would like to play some montage first. Okay. Okay, and then we will be continuing with this discussion today. So yeah, after the discussion, we'll be open the floor for some question and answer session. To you.
So let's take some questions from the floor. From the museum. Yeah, I got it. Oh, sorry. Yeah. KJ, you look very thoughtful.
No. You're going to comment, right?
Yeah, he's part of the panel.
No, is Yusuf going to comment about the book? No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So supposed to give a talk.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, sorry.
I want to see the overlap, how close the overlap between Sabah and Sarawak.
Yeah, our discussion today is the Malaysian Compact and the challenges going forward. So, yeah. To you, Yusuf Rahman.
I think I just sit. Okay, then I think I'm more comfortable sitting down. Anyway, thank you very much, Joe, for the honor of speaking at this launch. I was just telling him yesterday after I read the book, I think it should be made compulsory reading material in secondary schools. At least people can then learn something about Sabah and Sarawak. Sarawak also shares, I think, part of the rocky road towards Malaysia and within Malaysia. And a lot of people may not know because it's not taught in schools. We were never taught about the Malaysia Agreement in schools. And Joe's book has, I think, encapsulated the history of it with a bit of feeling and with a bit of, I think, knowledge which he has in fact gone to great lengths to acquire, going even to the very source of the Malaysia Agreement itself, which is now in the archives in London. I think the Kew archives. Yeah. So there is a lot of history that is there which doesn't appear in the official sources, and also have been not too long ago, very recently declassified. So even the British didn't want us, of course they didn't want Sabah and Sarawak to know what happened, behind the scenes especially, where everything was orchestrated and how Malaysia came about. people like Tun Puat, for example, were actually originally against the formation of Malaysia. We wanted independence first, and to form a confederation with the Borneo states, and then later we join up with Malaya. So these are history which people don't really know about, and which is why I think those books is very important. And if you read, once you read it, then you'll know. In Sarawak, for example, there were riots. There were riots against the formation of Malaysia. You know, and people don't know this. They had to be put down quite violently actually by the British. You know, in Sarawak. So I don't know about Sabah. But there may have been some opposition to the formation of Malaysia as well. But the Cobol Commission, which didn't have any Sabah representative, nor did it have any Sarawak representative, only British and Malayan representatives. The Malayan representative, one of them was Tan Sri Ghazali Shafi'i. Yeah. So anyway, we can, and when the report came out, actually, Tunku asked for it to be watered down because, and they couldn't water it down too much. Because there was in it at least 50% of Sarawakians and Sabahans didn't want Malaysia. You know. And in fact, there was one Temenggung in Sarawak. His name was Temenggung Oyong Lawai Jau. He gave a 6-hour speech. 6 hours, can you imagine? To his people, saying, in effect, that Sarawak will not have a nice time in Malaysia. Because Sarawak was very underdeveloped at that time. And Malaya was too far ahead. And he feared that the Sarawak's garden couldn't grow because it would be overshadowed. Even Tun Juga also said he had misgivings, he said, about Malaysia because he didn't want it to be like a sugar cane. In his own language. Sweet in the beginning, but tasteless at the end. And that's what happened. Because a lot of people don't realize it. Because it was an orchestrated thing. And although Tengku said initially that Malaysia would be Federation of equal states. But when the Malayans look at equality of states, they look at it as if Sabah and Sarawak are equal to each state in Malaya at that time. Yeah? So there's a bit of a wordplay there, which again Sabahans and Sarawakians were not aware of. Because most of the important discussions, they were left out. They were left out. And that is very clear when you go through the archives. And Joe has, I think, brought it out quite well. These are things which all need discussion. Otherwise, people will not understand why Sabahans and Sarawakians today, for a long time, in fact, feel very disillusioned. Nobody spoke out previously, Sabahans and Sarawakians, because everyone was scared of ISA. You know, you speak out against Mahathir, you know what's going to happen. And I had myself only became politically active after, I think, the formation of Keadilan that took place. Because I thought Sarawak needed to be dragged into the national discourse as well. You know? And this is, Joe's work, I think, is a very good effort towards giving perspective which most Malayans take for granted. They don't understand why Sabah and Sarawak think this way. Yeah, of course, as Joe said, we have our own corruption. True. Because we have forests and all that, the other resources. And those have been basically vandalized by local politicians. But well, a lot of people, when we talk about corruption, people will point straight away, oh, to Mustafa, Taib Mahmud, you know, and what else, who else? But many don't realize. It's fine. Anwar said that Sarawak got 96 billion from our oil and gas revenues. That's a 5%, and in some of the gas part, there's also 5, 10, and 25%. Yeah. Being the Sarawak's shares in MLNG. Then also, but a lot don't realize that when Taib Mahmud retired to become the governor, he left behind 33 billion. He didn't take the 33 billion with him, you know. There was 33 billion in reserves, which is what Abang Jo is spending now. Where do you think Abang Jo got the money? You know. So these are things which, and that's why when a lot of our projects were cancelled by our own people, who were then in the federal government, people like I don't want to mention names, but we don't. Sarawak decided to do it themselves, and they had the money. But in actual fact, for 50 over years, until today, this issue has still not been settled, including the issue of Sabah's 40%. Yeah. And people have to realize how much it really means to Sabah and Sarawak. What does it really mean? Many people don't know, which is why I keep insisting and I keep repeating myself every time I try to put forward the point. It actually involves trillions of ringgit. Trillions. We're not talking about 10 billion, 100 billion. We are talking about trillions. You know? What happened to all that money? Petronas only had 500 billion to reinvest. 1.5 trillion, which you know, went to the federal government for its operating expenditure and development expenditure, of course. Which is why if you realize, and I've gone through this, I mean, I've studied it. People don't realize. Now, are we going to keep losing another trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion? You know, these are things which I think everyone has to realize that there has to be some fairness and equity. You can't give the owner of the resources 5% and tell them that's enough. No? 5%, what is that? We were getting even more than that from Shell. We were getting 12.5%. More than almost 3 times that. So, how can that? It's not possible, I think, unless there is a restructuring, not just of the Malayan. Well, when we say Malayan, people have to realize one thing. Sarawakians, I don't know about Sabah, but Sarawakians are very traditional people. When we got into Malaysia, Malayans were Malayans. So we still remember that. And just like we do, for example, I was just mentioning this stuff, we still call kapal terbang balloon. Because that was the first kapal terbang we saw, a balloon, actually. And even in my town. When we go to Kuching, we say we are going to Sarawak. Because, yeah, Kuching is actually Sarawak. You know? And a lot of things got added on later. So we are like that. You know? So if I say I call a Malay, the Malay is anyway. No, nothing pejorative about it. It's just a fact. So anyway, I think coming back to Joe's book, once you've read it, you'll understand why I say it should be made compulsory reading. You know? Because there's a lot of, it's a treasure, even in a small volume like this, it's a treasure house of facts, which he has done a lot of research on, going right to the source. Sarawakis went to the source, but they never told us what was the effect. I mean, what it was all about. You know? Only that they had been there. And we didn't have anybody who wrote any books on it. Not even our minister or deputy ministers who went there. So we still don't know. Until I think at least we have Joe Samad to educate us. I believe he has done a good job. Please, whoever is in power, I would really recommend it as compulsory reading. Thank you.
So we are open to some question and answer from the floor. Anyone have any question?
To go afterwards. I'm traveled by public transport. You know, I've been to Sabah from 69 as I told Joe. Went to climb Mount Kinabalu. I've been going on and off to Sabah. My latest visit was last month, but that was on a holiday. But the thing that strikes me about Sabah is they changed the government many times, but they're equally corrupt, equally useless. Why has that been happening? I forget, the MA3, 63 and all that is a national issue. But even within the state, what worries me is the uselessness of your politicians. You change parties, yes, unlike Sarawak. Sarawak locked into by one dominant party. But you've been changing parties, you should have some progress. Why no progress?
Is it a question or comment? Okay, if yeah.
Get in properly.
Thanks, Jeffrey, for coming, my good friends. The last chapter of my book covers that, so I'm not going to answer. You have to buy my book, read it, understand it. But since we're friends, Sabah politics is always a complex issue, which even Sabahans like me don't understand. So, if you want to interpret in one way, others will interpret in a different way. But suffice to say that a lot of Sabah politics is influenced by federal politics. Okay, that's why I say in my book, my last chapter, Sabah election is like a general election. Okay, there's difference between general election and state election. So Sabah state elections is like a general election. All the political parties from here go over there, including some parties from Sarawak to contest in Sabah. Okay, so it resembles a general election. If PN, PH, or PAS, they're all there contesting. Why is that? Right? So the general understanding, not a rule, understanding last time that state politics is left to state parties, okay, Sabah and Sarawak. And Sarawak does a better job in keeping them out. We have not, okay. The influence of federal politics is very prominent, seen in Sabah, and that's why it's a hotly contested area, and some people would say it's a good sense of democracy, okay, where everybody has the right to participate and all that, okay. But too many changes also is not good for the state. So, but what Sabah experiencing now is you experience that all over the world, where there's turmoil and politics, and governments change day by day, and all that. So I just leave it as that. Okay. Any more questions?
Hang on. If you don't mind, if I may make a small comment on the differences, yeah, between Malaya, between Sabah, and between Sarawak. Goes back to the colonial days when Malaya was basically the British ruled Malaya through advisors and created a bureaucracy that overrid everything else. In Sarawak, it was a king, sultan, a raja, a white raja, but still, they ruled as an absolute monarchy. Benevolent, no doubt. They didn't. They put an end to headhunters and all that. But nevertheless, it was a family dynasty, and they're still true today. Sabah was run by a company, the British North Borneo company, and being a company, commercial interests were more paramount. So everything is business in Sabah. Whereas in Sarawak, follow the leader. That's how Taib Mahmud was chief minister for 33 years. Much longer than Mahathir was in power. And it's now Taib Mahmud's clan, the Melanaus, are only 5% of the population of Sarawak. How did we control Sarawak? Which is why now it's gone the other way around. There is still that kind of dynastic politics at play. And which is why Sarawak might seem to be stable, but at the same time, there's still undercurrents of dissatisfaction. Let me put it that way. So you can see the surface is quite calm, but beneath that there are quite a few crocodiles.
Thank you. Let me try and frame the context of my question. First, framing the context. I was from Royal Military College, then called Federation Military College. Okay? And I had senior friends who would serve in the jungles of Sarawak with the Sarawak Rangers. So I have heard life stories from people like that. Sabah I'm less familiar until I got to know some of the ministers from Sabah. And this was later in life, but got to know them, and one of them was the first to tell me, "You Malayana, why do you call us others?" That's the first time he hit me like a bolt of lightning. That issue was not resolved. It's still not resolved. Me. Okay? Even this morning I wrote a note to Saifuddin Nasution about this kind of thing. Okay? The point is, that is history. Okay? I give that as history. And that's why we have 14 stripes on the flag. I mean, Sabah and Sarawak should never have accepted 14 stripes on the flag. If you knew what you were doing. Don't forget the corruption and all. You can forget all that. The principle was wrong. How can you have 14 stripes on the flag and 14 points on the star? Now you are subsumed, into the logic of Malaya, the Federation of Malaya. So Malaysia is only an extension of the Federation of Malaya. Now, we go one step further. How then do we resolve this historical problem? Okay, one way is to go to court and establish the principle of law is still credible, rule of law still works, okay, still works. And we fought, I marched with Tunku Maimun to behold that nothing changes before she stepped down, and we succeeded to an extent. But the thing I think Sabah and Sarawak should push for is, in Parliament, change the flag. The flag doesn't reflect us. Not that. I'm serious. Tell we want a flag with 3 equal whatever. You want to put 3 equal kompang, then put 3 equal kompang. If you want 3 equal kris, put 3 equal kris, but we'll put our version of the kris, not your version. We have our own instruments for that. So we need to get there. If you can't get there, we are not serious. I'm serious. I'm talking as a Malayan. Because then as a Kedahan, I have to say, hey, where do I fit? Memang orang Kedah, okay, Tani Kedah. Where do I fit in this 3 structure? And I'm only a Malayan, 1/3. Kalau tidak, sure the 7 footballers will come and get their rights more than you and I. That's what's happening in the country. Corruption does not. Corruption kills all the green that he's been fighting for before we even knew the word environment or could spell it properly. What do you mean? He's been fighting that from university days. Do we care? Did Taib Mahmud care? Nobody cares. Mahathir care? No. 2 days. Sultan Selangor care? Doesn't care also. Still happening. Still happening. So, how do you shake up? And the third point I want to make is, where should the shaking up happen? I believe it has to be in today's world, not really through the court. Court can establish a principle, which 40% established court. But where do you resolve it? Exactly as the grandson of the Mogong Juga did. Scream loud enough, but in Parliament. Not in the media lah. Media, then you backtrack, apologize, all that. Because adat and adab in Malaysia is great. Malaya, very sensitive. Adab, very sensitive. Very sensitive. If we don't understand, I say it because I did my doctorate on the word dignity. Adab and defines dignity in every sense of the word. Akal also is defined in that word. So, we need to find a creative new way to create a dialogue in Parliament. So, my suggestion is, today I'll do this for Joe Sama. Today. I'll go downstairs, buy another copy of the book. And Pa Chong knows I do this usually. You give a personalized autograph to my good friend from Kedah, who is the Speaker of Dewan Raya, Tan Sri Joe Abdul. Okay? You write a personal note and say, can you create a dialogue in Parliament? Because they have the old building of Parliament kat belakang kan? And they do some big dialogues there. But if needed, I profile actors and players. Can you do a dialogue? Because we are concerned. Please read this book and read the last chapter. And then by April, I will be making the argument in Royal Selangor Golf, Dataran, making the argument that we're going to split into 3. And I already see the sign. And I'm only a organizational culturist. I see organizational culture and I interpret. That's my study. But that's all. What else? Then the dialogue goes into Parliament. Then maybe from the back of Parliament will go into the halls of Parliament. Then the Tamangang Jugo grandson can speak loudly and clearly without having to apologize. All of those who have to backtrack can start speaking. Tak perlu lah. Maybe these games only one. Cakap and then put back. Mind saja. And I used to work for, and this is a positive report of my minister, I used to work for Minister Rafida. You all can say anything you want against her, but she is a woman of her word. Okay? And that's my working relationship. When she says something is black, it is black. When she says white, it's white. If it's in between, she will say, KJ, don't touch this. This is a grey matter. Don't touch it. You won't understand because that's politics. Okay, so we need to understand that. Black is black, white is white. But there are also greys in the field of politics. And we need to meander those fields without getting hit. Apa? No, question is just a comment. Really, question is, we are past that stage. I've read your first book, now the third book. No question, not question. But I'm saying, are we in a real fight or are we shadow boxing? Then get into a real fight, then the real issue, then we are dealing with reality. Kalau tidak, nah wayang macam mana? Banyak jenis wayang. Atau tak ada. Thank you very much.
Do you want to answer or reply the comments, or are you open to another question?
No.
So, anyone else have any question? Nak tanya?
Correct, what you are saying. The question is now, how do we deal with it? Where is Malaysia headed to? Where is Malaysia headed to? If there is no equity, no justice, no fairness, then we might as well break up. You know, you can't treat each other that way. Sarawak has got its own politics as well. There is because Sarawak right now, other than the first Chief Minister, Inkan, and the second Chief Minister, Tawisli, who was put there to be quiet. Yeah, he was. He had only standard 6 education. Nothing more than that. Tun Juga himself was uneducated. No formal education at all. Not at any level. Tun Rahman and Taib were, of course, very well educated. Then came Adnan Satem, and later now Abang Jo. After the experience of the first Iban Chief Ministers, you must understand that the Ibans are the majority race in Sarawak. So they perceive that they should be the ones ruling Sarawak. So this is the undercurrent of Sarawak politics. And when Alex Nanta Linggi says something, he's not saying something as the ruling party. He's saying something based on his race as well. You know? And there is every hope by the Ibans that whoever takes over from Abang Jo will be an Iban. You know? To me, it doesn't matter. It can be Chinese, it can be Malay, it can be Iban, it can be Ranau, you know. It can be even a Kelabit, a Kayan. The important thing is that that person must be really able to take care of the interests of the state. Not just the state, but Malaysia as a whole, if we are to stay together. You know? But that's, I mean, that may be wishful thinking. You know?
Yeah. Anyone else? More question? Do you have any question? You?
Okay, so congratulations again on the book. I don't know if this is a question so much, but it is something that I tend to ask myself. So I would like to hear from both of you what your thoughts are. I don't particularly believe, because earlier the gentleman asked about Sabah elections and how that impacts the state of our affairs and our economy. But I personally don't believe that democracy exists in Sabah. Sarawak maybe also, because there are different forms. Because I believe that the chief ministers of Sabah are always chosen, and Sarawak as well are also always chosen by federal beforehand, because no matter what, they would never want to have a Dayak or a non-Muslim chief minister. So even as recent, so there are so many, so I'm glad that at least this book is kind of laid out in somewhat chronological order, talking about how each of the events and the elections and the choices of chief ministers are almost predetermined by federal, which makes elections in Sabah almost a farce, especially after Project IC. So my question would be, do you believe that in light of the Sabah riots of 1986, as well as just the maneuvering of chief ministers and Project IC, and therefore even the 2020 removal of Warisan, you believe that democracy exists in Sabah and that the Sabahan people actually have free and fair elections?
It's difficult to answer my daughter's question. First of all, I'm proud of our democratic process. I mean, it's still alive. Okay, you can put out the government you don't like, and you can elect the government that you like. But in between, of course, you got money, corruption, buying votes. I think it's hard to be precise on answering this, but there's a few things in my book which I like to highlight. One is the federal interference in state elections, and one is the demographic change, which is more of it's not subtle. Demographic change is permanent and it's forever with us. Because the people who were introduced into our election process have given birth to 2 or 3 generations of Sabahans who are now party voters and who can be influenced by other politics other than the original Sabahans who were there, who were only caring about their own community and so on. So the new generation of politics is basically can be manipulated by a bigger unseen hands like parties here, UMNO, I mean, for example, which has the second biggest branch in the whole Malaysia is Sabah. Okay, so how in a span of 2 or 3 decades they became the second biggest party in Sabah? You know, if it didn't come through all this process of demographic engineering and so on. So I think Yusuf already explained the background to how the election matured or is in the stage of maturing in our states. I mean, they had Sarawak had the Raja ruling, and we had the British company. Whereas under the Raja monarchic system, it's more orderly. They have a state legislature, and so in fact, Sarawak has the oldest state legislature in the whole country, and we have to recognize that democracy is actually being practiced at that stage. They have the 9 cardinal principles, which you can read about, which laid down of how the government should be evolved or practiced. In the case of Sabah, it was run commercially. They were not interested in creating new leaderships or people to take over. So in Sabah, people don't realize that our first state election is 1967. Yeah, that's post-Malaysia, 63. And we had the first state election. It's quite strange, right? Because the United Nations who came were supposed to make sure that we have a democratic elected government in place before they agreed that it's bona fide to allow Malaysia to happen, right? But we had the first election in 67, 3 years after, 4 years after the formation of Malaysia. So there are a lot of histories to read and to absorb and so on. And what I did in all my books is use the triangulation method of confirming events that has happened, like my book also. So the highlight for me is to go to the National Archives of England, where I spent some time searching the documents. Like Yusuf had mentioned, the Sarawak state government has sent the people, the Sabah state government sent the people, and various parties have gone there. What did they find? I mean, if what they found something they're not sharing with us, or they're sharing with us in bits and pieces. Whereas I went there on my own reconnaissance, my own expense, and I saw the documents. In fact, in my book, people still don't comprehend that the agreement for Malaysia was actually 1962, 31st of July. They've already written down the agreement on the formation of Malaysia. You must remember the dates, 1963, August 31st, and July 31st, 1962. So 1962, the Malayans and the British already sat down, agreed the terms and conditions of Malaysia, and they also nominated the date 31st August 1963 as being the date for the formation, official formation of Malaysia. So, can you imagine 1 year before, they already agreed among themselves, excluding Sabah and Sarawak, who were not at the table. So, KJ coming back, if you want to do a legal challenge, you can, okay? Because we were roped into under, I don't know the exact word, what circumstances, but basically we were not told the truth when we formed Malaysia. So if you go back to these documents, you can see religion has been discussed, you know, all these things that we see in the Kabul Commission, 20 points, 80 points for Sarawak, has already been discussed much earlier in UK, right? Negotiated between people like Ghazali Shafi from the Foreign Office. So it's cast in stone 1 year before. Okay, but people still cannot absorb that clearly, that your country has been formed without you knowing 1 year before and agreed 1 year before. To me, that's wow. See the documents in the British archives in the file. It's amazing, right? This is the documents that they use. Without telling Sabah and Sarawak, this is what we have agreed upon. Okay. So, the politics of today is result of, to me, very clear. You know, it's federal interference. Okay, centralization, over-centralization of government. And like I mentioned earlier just now, Sarawak has done a better job to shut them out, but I also know Sarawak politics under what he says, under the smooth flowing water, there's a lot of undercurrents. But whatever it is, still whatever they do, they did a greater job of being cohesive in the face of all these things. Okay, so how Abang Joe managed to hold all these people together is another story. Okay, but one thing he mentioned, and I remember clearly, it's in my book. He says he doesn't want UMNO to come to the state. Why? It's because of the destructive kind of politics regarding race and religion. And he said, we know how to deal with our people. We know how to control our race and religion. We don't need an outside party to come here and teach us how to run. Okay? So, on the surface, he's done a good job. And Sabah is come and see as it is, we don't hide things, That's our politics of the day. Whether you like it or not, we have to live with it, all right? For me, my personal perspective is it's not good for the state because we have 16 chief ministers, now 17 chief ministers. Since 63, Sarawak has 6 still, all right. So you can see by the number of chief ministers, how turbulent our politics are. But remember, there's one period of 5 or 6 years where Mahathir introduced the rotation of chief ministers in my book. We're the only state that have imposed this ruling where the chief ministers rotate on a 2-year basis. Okay, never done anywhere in Malaysia. It's not in our state's constitution. It's not in the federal constitution, but yet it's imposed by the federal government under Mahathir's time. And towards the end, the last chief minister appointed was from UMNO, and UMNO did not leave that 2 years, continued for next 13 years to be in power. That's where a lot of this destruction, corruption, and all that has occurred. Okay, so that's part of the story.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
My name is Tin Bin. I'm Sabahan, but lived in KL for quite a long time. First, I would like a question. I would like to just locate myself. I like to share that what both Datuk and Dr. have said about Sabah, especially the formation of Sabah. Formation of Malaysia Federation. I was myself a Form 3 student. And that time, I can still recall and remember that I was totally confused, and all my classmates were so scared. They don't know what was going to happen. And all we knew were a lot of rumors that if we are not going to join Malaysia, the communists will come, take over. So that is one. I mean, it's putting a lot of fear with no basis and no proper facts and information. So this is where I like to say that I get myself in context. And later on, when I passed secondary school and in tertiary level, I was more interested, I got more interested in politics, following politics at the time. And of course, that time it was Tun Mustafa dominating, and most people know him as a dictator. And I grew up in that political arena. Then, just recently, I hear and read and followed the Professor's writings and speaking, and also Professor James' teaching on land-based history and a lot of issues on Sabah, the social contract, whether we are equal partners. So I just want to connect myself to this events that have been unfolding to this point. And of course, I have not read everything and followed everything. But this one question here, from your 3 books that you have written, are there ways to promote and emphasize this? First, of course, in the education system, as history, because as a book it's very valuable, and most people do not know that these things are happening. Even to Sarawakians and Pahans. I have lived here for about 30 years, and my friends around me in KL and PK, when I introduce myself, I'm from Sabah. It seems so foreign to them. Sabah? And they always thought I'm from Sarawak. So I have to correct them all the time. So the question is, are there ways where this can be a public, popular education for, first of all, North Borneo or Borneo people, and also people in West Malaysia?
Yeah, what do you want? Education is so fundamental to everything. Okay? But unfortunately, we have to agree, said by many of our leaders, Sarawak and Sabah, the history system here is very biased towards Malayan history. That has to be corrected. It's very unfortunate. It's very, very difficult to change that because education system is under federal government. Okay, we don't have full control. But things are changing. So the books I write, for example, like Yusuf was saying, should be taught in schools and all that. It's going to happen because sooner or later the Malayans cannot live on their own, live in their own trees. They have to come down somehow to the ground, learn to appreciate Sabah and Sarawak. So it's happening. I mean, it's happening. But like I said, the education system is still being controlled by the federal, who are not honest about history. I just want to talk to you about communism. You mentioned just now in our conversation. I'm not so sure whether the threat of communism is real, okay, because I read that many times in many of the early writings, the domino threat, the domino theory, and so on. That's why America went to Vietnam, supposedly to prevent communism from spreading to Southeast Asia. They are political parties at that time. They are communist parties because basically communist parties exist everywhere around the world. Malaysia is no different. Okay, it's a democratic process. You can form your own party, and communist parties one of them. But a lot of the books try to say that they fear communism from spreading, and that is why Sabah, Sarawak, and all that, that's together with Singapore for Malaysia. To me, it's not true. It's not true. Okay? Because, but the fact is that the formation of Malaysia, or the grand design by the British, so-called in those days, started during the Second World War. They were already in the planning stage to decolonize all the countries, right? Because it's costing them a lot of money, right, to maintain. And they had to provide the security, Navy, Air Force, to protect the far-flung protectorates. And especially during the Second World War, they were fighting the Japanese and Germans and so on. Okay? They cannot longer afford to keep the empires, right? There's no communism there, all right? So only later they use this excuse in many of the writings I read. communism, threat of communism. In Sabah and Sarawak, it was not only the threat of communism. Okay, there was a threat from external geopolitics. Philippines claim to Sabah, Indonesian confrontation. There are a lot of other factors. It's just not communism, but it seems to me that this communism part is being played up quite a lot, which I disagree with. No, communism party exists, yes, but it has no direct influence in the formation of Malaysia. It's more that the Britishers decided that they want to get rid is quite a strong word, but to decolonize with pressure from United Nations. They want to make sure that all these countries around the world, Africa, where all the Commonwealth countries and or territories controlled by foreigners, to decolonize and give back the self-determination to the respective colonies. So communism to me is in there, but it's not a direct factor for these things. I hope that answers your question about communism.
Yeah, quite interesting. Yeah. Anything from Yusuf?
I'm like you. I don't believe communism was the real threat. It was used as a threat, and because the British wanted to engineer their own grand design. The same with Indonesia as well. They also raised the bogeyman of Indonesia and Philippines, as if Sabah and Sarawak couldn't exist on our own, that we were a threat from being taken over by Indonesia, which has no history with us, or the Philippines. I think the claim by Philippines over Sabah, was settled long ago between the Spanish and the British. So, and the claim for Sulu has long been lost in the mist of time. You know, it's just like somebody trying to revive the Mongolian Empire and saying that, oh, okay, Mongolia can now claim China. So these are all political boogeymen. So we don't need to give any credence to all this, and especially after such a long period of time has gone by. Those who study history will know what it's really all about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can conclude.
Yeah.
So I hope people living here, mainland peninsula, will take more effort, come to this kind of talks, try to understand. Sorry, what's your name again? Pushpa. You work in a museum and you're a lawyer by background, and you don't know much about Malaysia. So people like you should come to this kind of talks, read my book, read Yusuf's comments, as well as in the newspaper and all, I guess, to get to know the country. Unfortunately, very few people like KJ John who actually engages us or have the patience to engage us in discussions about our country. I say our country, okay, because here people think Sabah Sarawak is their country. I'm sorry, our country. Our country, we have the bigger land area than you guys. Okay, we can swallow you guys anytime in land area. But I think what I see, even today, I advertise this as much as I can to attract people living here to come to this kind of talk. And when I invited people to talk on stage, top level academics, historian, whatever, they say, I'm sorry, I don't know enough about East Malaysia. Now, they're my good friends, but when it's very disheartening for me to hear that kind of comment, because we know more about your side, your politics, your economy, your people, your social life than you know about this. Okay, so I think my parting word is make more effort to get to know the other side, which is Malaysia also. Okay. Funny enough, when I landed at KLIA, even today, my daughter always complains. This Grab driver, taxi driver, actually said, "Welcome to Semenanjung." I was very astounded by the way he said it. You know, I mean, like Semenanjung is a different country. You know? But when you were, yeah, yeah, he didn't say Malaysia. He said, "Welcome to Semenanjung." It was real. You know, I mean, that was 2 days ago, and normally I'll be quick to respond. You know, but I said I'll give it a pass because I'm quite tired after writing my book. 2.5 hour journey here and fighting to a taxi. I let it pass. But he was a nice guy. When he said that, it was not sarcastic or any malice or not. It was just genuine. He said, "Welcome to Semenanjung." Yeah. He'll be a good tourist ambassador. Welcome to Semenanjung. All right. So please encourage your friends to read my book. You know that other books coming up. Yeah, AJ.
Here's a thought. Can I ask you a question? This Kyrie and Edin Koo have a series called Sejarah Kita. I mean, they have crafted it quite well. It's inclusive. Can you and issues related to the book be interviewed by them? That's all. Because it challenges the paradigm. Because they're both Malayans, but history buffs, meaning they're serious about history. I don't know if you followed the series. I've been following it on YouTube. Quite credible. Mananya, they go beyond the folklore of PhD candidates who talk nonsense. Okay? They go into deep. For me, it's educational. I'm not a history major at all, so I find it educational. So it's just a simple question. If you can, because Kyrie needs an agenda and a platform somewhere. He's trying to find one. And people say he is this, that, and the other. I don't care. My point is, we're all Malaysians and we need to move the country forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You mentioned Edin Koo because I was recently appointed, as you know, to the Unity Committee to advise the government on unity matters. 12 of us actually. Tajuddin is one of them. Dr. Munira is one of them. Edin Koo is one of them. So we have a WhatsApp group. So last week I was somebody posted his podcast on mentioning NEP, you know, which I was very polite to say that NEP is for the Malays. It's not for Sabah and Sarawak because there's no study done on the NEP on Sabah and Sarawak, right? And NEP is basically for Peninsula. So these people, although they are on my same committee, I don't agree with them because there's still Peninsula-based mentality. Okay, they don't understand. Kerry does not understand about Sabah Sarawak. All right, so they should invite people like me. All right, right, to get the real fact. Okay, I don't want a West Malaysian talking about East Malaysia as if they know East Malaysia and ignoring us also at the same time. Okay, so even I'm on the Unity Committee whatsoever, I'm still questioning what is my role, because we're not doing anything in unifying the country. All right, we are posting Edin's Ku's conversation like this, and he's just ignored Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, and people here are very sensitive, very defensive. They even they're the high intellectual kind. KJ, not like you and me. We can play a role and yet be friends. I mean, if you invited me for dinner with a group of young people. Remember, we had this conversation, the constitution about Malaysia and all that. I like that. I mean, we open. We can disagree. We can agree, but disagree. No. So all this shows us very Ranjong centric views. They don't have any depth. So even NEP also, they don't understand what NEP is all about. Okay, you just go downstairs and buy a book on NEP. There's nothing about Sabah and Sarawak. All right. So no point talking about that, lah. So if that's all you got to offer, KJ, Kyrie, and I'm sorry, lah. I mean, yeah. I'm doing a podcast. My next podcast with Vinod Monday. Listen to me, lah. All right, interviewing me in the book instead of all this. I mean, I have nothing against them. But please, if you want to talk, invite the right people from East Malaysia. Talk about their country, their state, and like Yusuf. Don't speak on behalf of Yusuf. Don't speak on behalf of me. All right. Let us speak for ourselves, give our viewpoint. So all these talk shows and all that, they make themselves great and all that, but they're only talking among themselves in their own cycle, their own close-knit culture circles. But when many times there's seminars and they say Malaysia, or they talk about education system in Malaysia. Then I said, on your committee, is there any Sabah, Sarawakan? Oh, yeah. Oh, next time we'll invite you all. So we are just an afterthought. So, I mean, you look at all the Malaysia panel that talks about all these topics, they say none of them are from Sabah and Sarawak. Okay? But they use the word Malaysia. Okay, let me tell you what I discovered in the archives as well. And I think you mentioned, a little bit. Malaysia is actually not a new country. Okay? Sabah and Sarawak was just put as appendix. Okay? When we were in the United Nations for the first time under Malaysia, we were not a new country. We were just Malaya, and we just invited Sabah and Sarawak join us. Okay, so that's how we treated. That's why when you mentioned about the flag, in all sense of the word, we were part of the Federated States, whether we like it or not. We have to recognize that was their idea, right? So it's not a country with a new constitution, completely newly born country, but it's just an extension of Malaya, and that's how the British treated us and so on. So it's a sad thing, I mean, to open the files, which is almost 70, 80 years old, and to see what is written there, and to realize that you don't actually have a part in the formation of Malaysia. You were just a bystander. You remember at that time, Malay 57 is already independent country. Singapore is autonomous region. Okay, they had self-government. Okay, the only outlays out there is Sabah and Sarawak, who is still a British colony. Brunei is a British protectorate. Okay, they have their own British ambassador in Brunei. Right? So they're a different entity altogether. Only Sabah and Sarawak, they did not know where to position us. And so they put us in together with Malaya and to become Malaysia. So that's the fact, sad fact, we have to accept. And if we say we want to leave Malaysia, we have a lot of grounds to leave Malaysia. First of all, false pretenses. Okay? All right, you go to court and say, hey, look, when we formed Malaysia, what was the I don't know what's the legal word Yusuf to say. Right. I mean, we were misled, definitely, legally misled, misrepresented that, you become equal partners of Malaysia or special region, which they promised us, and it never happened. All right. We just absorb, into greater, Greater Malaya, not Greater Malaysia, So, my second book also, The Social Contract, you should read that also. Because that's the basis of the constitution of Malaya, which became Malaysia. In Article 153, you can see the social contract. That's why my book all has significance and context, which everybody should read, because that's how they framed it. They say, this social contract, which is not written down between Malay, Chinese, and Indian, suddenly was extended to Borneo. All right, not of us don't know that, we don't read, but it was extended. Mahathir said that. It's written down there. When Sabah and Sarawak joined us to form Malaysia, the social contract is extended to Sabah and Borneo, Sabah and Sarawak, and it says they name us Bumiputra to distinguish us from the other races in Malaysia. So Malaysian is Indian and Bumiputra. All right. So the social contract today exists because like Akmal, you can say Islam is a superior religion, and we can use Islam and our race to do whatever you want to do. Chase you for upside down flag, or where you got Allah written on your socks. I mean, people don't do these things intentionally. We have to understand that. But when you politicize it, make it big, and then you use your race and religion to demolish other races in the country, you're destroying your own country, right? And here in Sabah and Sarawak, we are trying to, upgrade our infrastructure, basic infrastructure, which has been ignored 60 years, water, electricity, whatever, and to attract investments from overseas. What people in overseas see, Akmal, this and that. That's the headline the press love to put together. Not so much, Sarawak is doing this, Sarawak is doing that, hydro, whatever, and Sabah is doing this and doing that, reforestation. They don't talk about those things. They talk about all these issues about race and religion, which, of course, concerns a lot of investors. When they come to a country, they're concerned about race and religion, riots, instability, and so on. So I think we have to put all these things back proper perspective. We become the victims, Yusuf, and it's not fair to us. So let's leave it at that. Thank you. Any more questions?
Actually, Datuk, we received a few questions from our online audience. So the first question is for Datuk Joe. If you could map the next rocky road in your writing journey, where will it lead? And then the second question, do you expect the book to resonate more strongly in the rural communities where water, electricity and road access are pressing concern compared to urban readers? And a few questions for Yusof. Do you think Sabah Rocky Road can serve as bridge for deeper conversation between Sabah and Sarawak, especially around shared like rural development and autonomy? And the second question is, do you think Sarawakians will empathize with the struggle depicted, or will they approach the book more as an outsider's window into the Sabahs? So those two questions. Yeah.
What's the first question? Let me answer that. I'll pass to you, sir. Okay, where would the Rocky, if I wrote another book, where would the Rocky Road go to? Okay, something like that. Okay, that's a good question. To give it context, Sabahans have been complaining about our infrastructure, especially our roads. They call it the moonraker. Sometimes I don't need to go to the moon because I already experiencing the same on our roads and all that. So the my fourth book, which I'm planning already, Yusuf, is to bear the facts about the real story about the formation of Malaysia. Okay, literature review of the different books and articles about formation of Malaysia. For example, I'm going through Tan Sri Ghazali Shafi's book because he wrote a memoir about the formation of Malaysia. A lot of people have written about it, but Tan Sri Ghazali is in my mind because he was one of the major Malayan leaders who went to negotiate about the formation of Malaysia. So his memoir is very important. I'm reading about Tengku Abdul Rahman, also memoir, see what's there. Of course, Lee Kuan Yew I'm familiar with because I read it in the past already. So all these memoirs I'm picking up because unfortunately all our leaders are dead. So I have to rely on various writings and so on and triangulate it with the British Archives papers, right? So if I can put it all together, basically, which I already sort of concluded, of course, we were brought into Malaysia under false pretenses. I don't need to read much deeper because I've seen the papers, the British Archives and so on, which points in that direction. So, but in order to draw a conclusion as a writer, as a researcher, I have to be accurate about what I say. So I'm going through all these books and all that to get the accuracy of the details, to confirm this is actually what happened, and to come to some kind of conclusion. But I never like to come to a conclusion on my own. I leave it to the readers to decide for themselves based on the facts. So that's why all my books you see has references. Okay, I'm one of the writers who believe in putting references because I know that people will always challenge you where you get your source, why you say this, who said that, right? And they have the right to question you. They have right to doubt you, but mine is based on facts. You can open the book and you go to the reference, you click on the internet now, you can see there where I got my source from. Okay, I think pass to Yusuf first one. Then I come back to mine. You want me to answer the second one? Okay. Well, I never think my book as between urban and rural readers. It's for everybody who's interested in the history, the politics, the economics of the state or the country. So it affects everybody. I mean, water, electricity, lack of infrastructure. It resonates with Sabahans and Sarawakins also. There's no difference between the two, lah. But the book is for everybody.
Yeah, for everybody. I hope that answers the question from kita punya online audience. And then untuk Yusof, ada orang tanya, do you think Sabah Rocky Road can serve as bridge for deeper conversation between Sabah and Sarawak, especially around shared issue like rural development and autonomy?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, we share similar history in that sense. The Kapit Road, for example, was promised in 1963 and only became a reality in 2024. So, a lot of things were promised but never delivered. And I think the same with Sabah. So, we would certainly share and empathize with Sabah as well. We can learn a lot, of course, from our common shared experience. And it's not just about Sabah and Sarawak learning from each other, I think. But more important is that Malaya should learn from Sabah and Sarawak. Because there is not much discussion about Sabah and Sarawak, especially in the Malayan media. It's only recently that this kind of dialogue has come about. And I think if we look at, there's still a lot of people who think Sabah and Sarawak want to get out of Malaysia. And they, of course, have negative views about it. But they have no qualms about holding on to our oil and gas wealth. As I said, worth trillions of ringgit, and depriving us, Sabahans and Sarawakins, of developing our own resources. So, I think they have really to learn more about Sabah and Sarawak. Yeah.
And then another question. Do you think Sarawakian will empathize with the struggle, or will they approach the book more as an outsider's window into Sabah?
No, I think Sarawakians are quite open-minded. We learn from everything. We learn from Malayan history, we learn from Sabah history as well. While we may not know as much about Sabah history, because, again, it's not taught in the schools. So we have to learn it ourselves. And we can, of course, empathize with it because there are a lot of shared elements to it, especially against a common, I would say Malaya is a neo-colonial enterprise, which is why they have grabbed hold of our resources, our land, our territory, our continental shelf. How could they even think about it? This is somebody else's. It belongs to us. And even the Constitution itself says that the states that make up Malaysia come into Malaysia with the territory that they had just before Malaysia Day. So then after Malaysia Day in 1966, they want to take over our continental shelf. They want to take over our oil and gas. Tak boleh lah. Bukan Malaysia, everything boleh. Tak boleh. So they have to understand this. Okay, thank you.
And open another question from the floor. Anyone has any question?
Okay. On the subject of, since we're talking, succession is often a subject that comes up when you're talking about the MA63. I am personally indifferent because I think that nation building can be a form of violence in itself, and it's a lot of work. But I'm very intrigued by the language that's around it because historically, Sarawak was the first to make Malaysia Day a public holiday, and then Sabah, and then Peninsula Malaysia was the last to start celebrating Malaysia Day as a public holiday. In fact, they celebrated the wrong birthday of Malaysia, counting from 1957, and then counting from 1963 for Malaysia's actual birthday, annual anniversary, 50th anniversary. There was no parade or similar celebration. And since Peninsula Malaysia, I'm not blaming people per se, because when you look at the history of media and nation building, and you were talking about education earlier, federal government only wants the people to know as much as is useful to them. So it's not a personal sort of thing. But I'm very intrigued by the language that we use, and my question actually is, why do we talk about Sabah and Sarawak leaving Malaysia and not kicking West Malaysia out of Malaysia instead? If Peninsula Malaysia, or federal actually, is the one who are violating the MA63, why don't we kick them out instead of saying that Sabah and Sarawak should leave?
Well, there are many discussions like that in my WhatsApp group from Penang the other day. I was quite astounded by similar what you're saying, that instead of Sabah, Sarawak leaving Malaysia, Malay should leave Malaysia and leave the good people behind. But anyway, different perspective, different historical background, all that. But I think my personal self is that we should stay in Malaysia. I think most of these frustrations, Sabahan for Sabah, Sarawakian for Sarawakians, or leaving us, ceding from Malaysia, is it's a sign of emotional. It's more an emotional statement than anything else. The problem here, West Malaysians don't ask the question, why do you want to leave Malaysia? They should ask the question, why do you want to leave Malaysia? Then we can give you the reasons why we want to leave Malaysia. All right? Don't just ignore us and say, oh, because we want to leave Malaysia, because we're not happy with this, we're not happy with that. Well, many states and many federations around the world, they're not happy with the central government. America is one of them also. State of California does not agree with Washington. So same here. Sabah Sarawak does not agree with the federal government in any sense. But why is that? We never seems to ask that question, why we want to leave or why we feel this way. We have never been able to sit down and address this unemotionally and this grievances down. Sabah Sarawak has already written the grievances down. It's very clear. You read Professor James Jones' article and all that. It's already clear. It's clearly stated Sabah and Sarawak grievances relating to Malaysia Agreement 1963. But we never pursued on this side of the of the land in Malaysia to find out exactly what's the grievances on the other side. If they really take interest, try to understand, try to bridge the gap, then I think things will be much better, right? So now Sarawak Minister is saying it's never meant to be that we are together, divided by ocean and so on. So this kind of statement is not good for us going forward. Yeah. Sorry.
That doesn't answer my question.
Before you do answer that question,
Yeah.
I can just interject. Pardon this.
Yeah, sure.
Pardon this ignorant Malayan, but isn't there a very high-level committee that is actually discussing MA63? And is it that these issues are not raised at that committee meeting? Because there's supposed to be a committee that's supposed to resolve these differences, or at least that's what the press says. I don't even know if they meet.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we also read the news. I mean, we're not privy to what's going on inside the committee, but we know there is a committee of discussing these issues, right? But in a committee, we're more concerned about the results. Right? What was the result? Committee can be stalled, can be slow, can be dragging. But let's take one point, 40% sharing of revenue, tax sharing of revenue, which is in the news. And Sabah Law Association took the federal government to court and they won the first round. Now, I mean, it's in the constitution. What do we need the committee to discuss? It's in the constitution. Now, every time you talk about the constitution, they will slam you and say, hey, this constitution is supreme. Don't question the constitution. Okay, you cannot amend the constitution. That's the constitution. You have to follow it strictly by law. Okay? If that is the case, I respect you. But then when it says you have to pay Sabah government 40%, where do I respect you if you ignore that part of the constitution, conveniently ignore it all these years, and depriving us of our rights to revenue that can help develop the state? So it's all this committee, which committee for sure. It's not committee for results.
First of all, we have to understand the definition of committee. A committee is a body of persons through which ideas are dragged into a cul-de-sac and quietly strangled. So, we don't know what they're discussing. They don't tell us. They just say, oh, this has been resolved, that has been resolved. How it has been resolved also, they don't tell us. So it's just like the way Malaysia was formed, where backroom deals are made which affect the interests of the state and its people, but we have no say. That's what they did with the Petroleum Development Act of 1974. In the first place, does Parliament have the right to take over any state's resources or territory? Number one, without the state's consent, without compensation. They never paid 1 cent to take over Sabah and Sarawak's oil and gas resources. Not 1 cent. They just took it over. They got the both chief ministers to sign saying, oh, this is the deed of vesting. But do chief ministers have that kind of power? That power rests only with the state assembly, not with the chief minister. It's just like Trump going to war without Congress approval. It's unconstitutional and he can be impeached for that. But Sabah and Sarawak were never given a chance to discuss it. Of course, yes, then they tell us, oh yes, of course. But Sarawak and Sabah MPs all voted for it. But can our MPs' decisions in Parliament bind the state? No. That is fundamental. It's a fundamental legal principle. Because our MPs have got no authority over state resources. It's only the state government, via the state assembly, which has authority and power. But everybody conveniently forgot that. Which is now Petronas is actually in a limbo. If they bring the case to court, they can win. Yes, maybe. If they don't win, what happened? They are part of an illegal takeover of state resources. And coming back to this question, for me, I am openly, I will say, I'm a secessionist. Sarawak can survive on its own. Sabah can survive on its own. All it takes is the state assembly to make the decision. We do not want to be a part of it. And that's the end of this MA63. MA63 in the first place is also, if we follow the decisions of the International Court of Justice, in the case of Diego Garcia, for example, because it was made while we are still colonies. That decision was made without our free consent. It is against international law. So, what's the real status of MA63? You know, the real status of MA63 to me is that it is not, it is null and void. It's invalid under international law. Colonial power cannot make decisions on behalf of colonies when it comes to matters of independence. There must be a referendum. There was never a referendum. We got a Kabul Commission instead, which doesn't mean anything under international law. But they gave it some credibility and credence in order to convince the United Nations that, notwithstanding the objections of Indonesia and Philippines, that this was some kind of consent given by the people of Sabah and Sarawak. There's no such consent. People went to the extent in Sarawak of making a 6-hour speech against the formation of Malaysia, or the, you know. Did anybody else listen to it? Not even the Kabul Commission. They were not even based on land. They were based in a ship. Came down to earth just to meet with a few thousand people, maybe 100 over 1,000, 500,000 Sabahans and Sarawakians. The only way to put that all to an end is to go by a referendum to stop. But they didn't do it. So where are we now? Well, the decision is up to each state. The only question is whether they have the political will to do it. The political will means, in this case, whether they think their interests still lie with Malaysia, or with Malaya, or with their own selves to determine their own destiny. To me, we are perfectly capable of dealing with our own destiny. You have a body like Petronas, for example. 60% of oil and gas resources come from Sarawak. But they've never had a Sarawak CEO. They didn't have even a Sarawak representative or Sabahan representative, for that matter, on their board of directors until 2016. And that was because we started making noise. You know? Otherwise, they don't bother. They talk about following the law, following the constitution, but they don't do it. In the Petroleum Development Act, what people call for short PDA 74, there is a provision for the formation of a Petroleum Council to guide the Prime Minister. Have they ever done it? No. They have never formed that council. So where does the Prime Minister get his advice? What does he know about oil and gas? He's not an oil and gas expert. All he knows is, oh, we got money coming in from Sabah and Sarawak. How much do we give back? That's all. To them, 5% giving back to us is good enough. To us, it's peanuts. So it's up to them whether they want to take that into account or not. Again, as I said, Sabahans and Sarawakians have to decide for themselves. Do you continue accepting peanuts or banana? Are we monkeys? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Do you have any question before we wrap up this session? No. Anything else from your side, Datuk Jo?
I'd like to thank Yusuf, my good friend, for coming here today and joining the session to share his views, and to all our audience who came here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And today kita ada 20% discount for Datuk Jo Samad Sabah Rocky Road to Malaysia. You can get them downstairs dekat kita punya bookstore. So that's all. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. Oh, Can we all get on stage? Richard. Mari. No, so many of you say also. I see.
One, two, three. Well done now. Okay, now the timber.
Oh yeah, one more. Yeah.
There's a lot.
I know. Come. Boleh, come.
Jangan lupa bayar.
Ada discount tu.
Okay, one, two, three. One, two, three. One, two, three.
Oh, okay.
Portrait as well. One, two, three. Yeah.
Oh.
Portrait the angle begini.
Oh.
Yeah, portrait.
Jauh lah.
Okay.
One, two, three. And one, two, three. Okay.
Thank you.
Very sure. Oh, thank you. No problem. Oh, thank you.